Hello, everybody. Welcome. I hope you're having a great day. Today we have back Mr. Jim Willis. Jim? How are you?
Oh, I'm good, Rafa. And how's yourself?
Awesome. Yeah, I'm doing good too. I'm really
Good,
happy to
good.
have you here. It's been a really long time since we spoke.
That's
Um,
right.
a
That's
lot
right.
has happened, especially during this intense year of
Yes.
2021.
Yeah.
Um,
Just when we thought we were coming out the other side of it, all of a sudden it appears we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, it seems like it's gonna have a few steps. Um,
I think
this
so.
this situation until the dust settles.
Yes.
Like there
Yes.
was that time when, oh, is there something happening or not? Then it's the masks, then it's
Uh-huh.
the the poke,
Mm-hmm.
etc. Right? And
Yeah.
there's going to continue being now. It's like, okay, so secondary effects that might appear long term or
Yeah.
mid-term,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
knows, right? It's going to be
And
a
and
novel to look at.
and here in the United States at least, there's a whole political part of it that goes on.
Mm,
We've got one state here, for instance, that has just decided they're going because for political reasons, from political pressure, they've decided they're not only going to stop money for outreach into poor uh, areas of the state for COVID vaccines, but they're going to
mm,
cut out all vaccines. Um, and it's strictly a political position. It doesn't make any sense, but it just it goes on and on. And as a result, now our rates are rising sometimes like 45% over the course last couple of days. And
mm.
here where we are, it's not too much of a problem, but there are pockets around the country that are, oh, it just makes your heart sick for what's happening.
Mm.
It's very frightening. I find it very frightening indeed.
And at the same time, for me, it's very interesting to look at the narrative kind of from um, a higher perspective, or trying to look at it
Um,
from the outside also
mhm.
to keep in context that everything in the end is actually safe, right?
Mhm.
We are really protected, and we are creating all of this from
Yeah,
our
yeah,
inside, and all of this is an opportunity for us to dig deep and find what places we can polish and transform within ourselves
yeah, yeah.
to better help the community and ourselves.
Having written so much about lost civilizations and fallen cultures, I'm finding it very difficult to take that high position that you talk about. For instance, I look at a state of the state of Florida, for instance, within a couple of decades after the first contact with Europeans, our whole indigenous population of Florida, 95% of them died through plagues and through pandemics, that germs and stuff, especially smallpox and typhoid, and brought over by the Spanish conquista when they first came to Florida. Same thing in New England. The Where I used to live in New England, the Pilgrims landed, and they saw these great fields that were just beginning to be overgrown. They thought it was natural. They didn't realize that Indians had been farming in those fields for thousands of years, and that what had happened was through contact with fishermen off the coast and through um, different kinds of explorers, the Indians of New England had picked up these diseases, and they just went rampant. They had no defenses for them at all, and they just went rampant through the population. And when I study past histories of civilizations that have had this happen to them, I just wonder, why can't we learn our lesson? That this is very real, and it just breaks my heart when I think that we just have all of this information that could have helped us if we'd only pay attention to it. But we are no longer, at least around where I live. Very few people are students of history, and they just don't understand that this is not something new, something that has been invented, something that whether it's an age old human problem that has destroyed civilizations in the past. And I find it very troubling, but frustrating, because what can one person do except to talk to you on podcasts like this and try to spread the word around as much as we can.
Nico, because there's also so much. I mean, there's a whole lot that you said there that is so interesting.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
all is, mm, in the end, that about learning the lesson right from history, and
Yeah.
our relationship to history, and but at the same time, history seeming like a thing, how to put it, that was handed to us
Hmm.
in a way,
Yeah.
um, but with what we don't kind of resonate very much in our
Yeah.
hearts with what has
Yeah.
happened in history.
Hmm.
And so many times there can appear this thing of thinking about, certain conspiracies, right? Like, oh,
Hmm.
certain thing in history isn't what you think. This other
Yeah.
thing was different. Um, the For example, in many things that you definitely write about, when civilization started, where what were the relationships between the different people from around the globe, was
Hmm.
there contact in ancient past.
Hmm.
We've been handed this history that says no, impossible.
Yeah.
But then you start uncovering ancient temples and cities and
Yes.
tombs and a lot and a lot and a lot of information that was even kept and preserved from the past, so that it
Yes.
would be found in the future. Like they knew that there would be need to find this in the future, like Gobekli
Yes.
Tepe, right, and
Yeah.
other places which are very
Yeah.
interesting.
I
And
find it I find it very encouraging to study, for instance, the Atlantis tradition.
mm,
I know that many people don't uh, believe in a physical Atlantis. I happen to be one that does. I think it was the legend, the tradition was based on a real incident, but
mm,
uh, the incident itself, when Plato told us about it in the Timaeus, for instance, he used it as a teaching parable. He said something that just resonates with me, and I can't get it out of my mind. He said, "For many generations, they obeyed the laws and loved the divine to which they were akin. They reckoned that qualities of character were far more important than their present prosperity. So they bore the burden of their wealth and possessions lightly and did not let their high standard of living intoxicate them or make them lose their self control." But then he went on to say, "But when the divine element in them became weakened and their human traits became predominant, they ceased to be able to carry their prosperity with moderation." And as a person who lives in a fairly affluent part of the world, I just can't help but listen to that last
mm,
line. Are we carrying our prosperity with moderation, or as you say, has it just been handed to us and so we've taken it for granted? And are we making the same mistake that Plato was warning about when he talked about the Atlantis tradition? He placed a spiritual element in it. He said that the reason that they were brought down low in a day was not just because of a physical act, but because they uh, decided that somehow the gods must have been judging them. And that's a common thing in mythology. The same thing we find in the book of Genesis, Noah's flood. The earth was destroyed with a flood, but there was a reason for it, the Bible says, because God was judging them. Um, and whether or not you believe in God, or whether or not you believe in a God who judges us by sending us these calamities,
mm,
there's no question about it that our ancestors believed that when something happened to them and they said, "How could this have happened?" And they went to the spiritual right away. They said, "What have we been doing wrong that has brought this upon us?" And I know that in today, that isn't today's culture, today's society, that isn't a popular way of thinking. Most people don't want to get into that aspect of it because we don't want to believe in a God who judges us. But perhaps the metaphor is worthwhile. It very real. Are we bringing something upon ourselves? that in future generations someone might say it was a divine judgment. I don't know. I'm not a an expert. All I can do is
Mhm.
report on it, but it sure seems to me that we're following in the footsteps of civilizations that have been in positions that we are. Maybe not the same technology, perhaps a different technology. I don't know. But when something happened, and now here in my country, for instance, we have wildfires in California. We have the lakes, the reservoirs out west that power the big cities like Las Vegas and Los Angeles. They're drying up. There's just no water anymore. 35 feet down in some areas, the water level has shrunk. So they're not able to generate the power that they are. And yet we're still driving in 10-lane highways with our cars, which pollute so much and bring about a whole global catastrophe. And then, of course, we're playing with these dangerous weapons, especially in the Mideast, of nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction. And we see no trouble at all with spending literally millions of dollars to build a plane that's going to deliver a drone that costs thousands and thousands of dollars, that's going to with pinpoint accuracy target a specific part of a country where people are living in abject poverty. We don't have any trouble spending money for that kind of stuff, but we don't want to spend that same kind of money to help these people out of abject poverty. It's a strange race we belong to, Rafa. I don't. Sometimes I try to have so much hope, and then other times I just I just lose it. Which is why it's very good for me to talk to
Mhm.
positive people such as yourself once in a while. I appreciate it.
Mm. And it's so important to not shy away from the shadow also, this is
Yes, yes.
a very ripe moment for
Uh-huh.
people to focus on that, and we are starting to become more aware in a collective sense of all of humanity, with
Yeah.
that is kind of the positive side of the interconnectedness and the social media
Yes.
and the globe or the world has become a point.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I don't I don't read any of the Chinese languages or dialects, but I've been told that there is a character, one particular Chinese character when written that it has two meanings, either opportunity or basically
mm,
disaster. And I think that's where we stand right now. When
mm,
you say there is hope in social media, there's another example. It's a wonderful thing to get
mm,
people together, and yet it's so often taken over by very bad people,
mm,
used in very bad ways. Um, it's the same thing with all of our things. We have such hope and such possibility, and on the other hand, we see that hope and possibility as a double-edged sword.
mm,
It can heal or it can hurt, and which way are we going to go? I think we're standing that probably, I don't know, maybe not in my lifetime, but certainly in the lifetime of my children. Um, we're going to have some serious decisions, and the future, definitely we are coming to a crossroad when we're going to have to choose and see which way we're going to go.
mm. For me, it is so much mm, of understanding that it's a given, that there's corruption in the world.
Yeah.
It's something that's inescapable, or that
Hmm.
at least for now it seems inescapable, and like being aware of its existence is super important, and then like trying to learn to let go of that
Yeah.
and keep it like out of mind, in a way
Hmm.
to 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 center my focus on other things, on being creative and and shining the light or whatever, but
Hmm.
and also into my own self, because I mean I'm like anybody else with my own ups and downs, my own problems, my own
Sure. Sure.
uh, but my own challenges and triumphs, etc. uh, and I'm super happy to have found this way of interfacing
Hmm.
with what happens in life, because there are very tough moments in the
Yeah.
personal life, in the life of our whole human group and collective
Hmm.
and human species. There definitely has been tough moments as well as brilliant moments, and we're starting to learn every day more and more how the spiritual aspect of things has has a very important role in the
Hmm.
evolution of humanity. Like
Yes.
we have uh, we have been keeping out of mind something that should have been kept inside the mind, and
Hmm.
we focused our minds only with the material and the rational
Yeah. Yeah.
and the logical and whatever. And we're starting to remember, oh wow, the spiritual, because I mean, in a way it never left. These
Hmm.
traditions still exist today. Natives in different parts of the world
Hmm.
have carried on that, and I don't know, Buddhism or Hinduism, etc., different
Yeah.
Christianity itself, but lots of traditions that have kept the flame alive in a way, um, waiting for the rest of of humanity to come back to their senses and to
Yes.
to take this bird's eye perspective of what's happening, and see things through a spiritual lens.
Yeah.
That gives you the chance to value things, and recontextualize things,
Hmm.
and understand, oh wow, this incredible tough moment actually led or leads to something better, to something
Hmm.
more
Yeah.
expansive, to
Yeah.
something more healed, more liberated, closer
Yes.
closer to our true nature.
Yeah. I find that extremely comforting in religious traditions. In my spiritual home for most of my life was Christianity, and I find it a wonderful way to look at that story again and see that when things seem the darkest, um, when the good is being nailed to a cross, and 3 days of darkness come, on the other side of that was a brand new beginning. And I sometimes think that the religious traditions, which tell, and all of them have stories such as that, um, I find that very encouraging. That it's always in that dark valley, but then the sun comes up again, and it's a new beginning. Even at the close of the Bible, it seems to everybody talks about the Bible ends with Armageddon, the Battle of Armageddon, when everything is destroyed. But that's not the truth. It doesn't end
Mm.
with the battle, with the end. Armageddon issues in a brand new beginning, a new heaven and a new earth, and we begin again. And I find a great deal of encouragement in that, in the religious traditions that have been around for thousands of years. They tell us, look up, look up, the sun will come.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm just checking my notes. um, yeah, so
Yeah.
you've been recently working uh, in a totally new area, as you said,
Yes. Yeah.
writing fiction,
Fiction.
right? I was very
I
interested to learn more about your story.
well,
The title was intriguing.
I needed a change. For so many years, I had been writing about lost civilizations and looking backwards, and dealing with the research involved in ancient traditions. And I'm still fascinated by it, of course, but I needed something different. When I wrote my latest book that has just been published, Censoring God, the History of the Lost Books of the Bible, I thought that was probably going to be my last book, because it was a subject, trying to look at all those books that didn't make the final cut when the Bible was put together. It's a subject that I've been studying for 40, 50 years.
Right.
So I figured that was going to probably be it. And then my writing career would probably come to an end with that. But all of a sudden, I woke up one morning and I had the idea that I just wanted to do something different, and a story unfolded in my mind. The whole story was there in the outline of the whole story was there in a matter of minutes,
Mm.
and it was just a matter of writing it. And I'd never written fiction before, and to be able to write dialogue. And this story is the book is called The Wizard in the Wood, and it's a kind of a coming of age story about um, a young boy who meets someone who appears to be a homeless man, but is very wise, and he teaches the boy to have a whole new spiritual outlook on life. They talk about dowsing. They talk about
Mhm.
out of body experiences. He teaches the young boy how to meditate and gives him a brand new appreciation for nature. And as the story unfolds, and this young boy grows up and goes off to school, and then goes off to war, and has to put some of these to the test. In his case, in Vietnam, because it's set against the real life times of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And as he goes off to war, and as he loses this childhood innocence and magical, awesome way of looking at the world, and that later in life he regains it. And it's been fun not only to write the story, but when the book was done, we decided, my daughter and I, who do all this together, we decided that we needed to do more than just write the book and get it out there, because it's in the tradition of storytelling, and so it needed to be an audio book. Well, she does all the technical stuff, but that meant that I had to not only narrate the book, but add the music and add the special effects and learn how to use a mixing program and all this kind of stuff. So I find at the ripe old age of 75, I'm learning about technology that I've never learned before. And I'm just having a ball with it. It gets my mind totally off the old way of doing things and makes me realize that there's many different directions to go in. So I've been having a lot of fun with it. I really have.
Yeah, definitely. Seems such a nice story to tell, and I can see yourself so much reflected in all the details
Well,
that you wrote up.
Jan keeps telling me people are going to say this is autobiographical. There are parts of it that are pretty resonate pretty strongly. He
Mm,
learns to play the guitar. He learns music.
mm,
He learns what music is, and he's taught over and over again that people use music for entertainment,
mhm,
and then music is so much more than that. And he learns to resonate and finally hear the music of the spheres for the first time as an old man. And it's been fun. It's kind of a combination autobiography. Young Jim Willis meets the old Merlin out in the woods or something like that. But
mhm,
I've really enjoyed it, and setting in the history of my own lifetime. It's fun because I can bring in all of these things. Uh, Music of Elvis Presley makes makes a an appearance, and yet the Vietnam War is there, and
mm.
the whole idea of economy as he goes into business, following it, and everything else. So it's set against a backdrop of which I am very familiar. So yeah, it's not autobiography, but some of it is.
Mhm. Yeah, and I was thinking also, young Jim Willis meets older Jim Willis,
That's
right?
exact. Well, that's exactly what happens at the end. But I don't want
Mm.
to give it away in case the book isn't out yet, and I don't know how long. We just had one publisher who was asked to see it, and we're getting in the process of sending it to somebody else. So we'll see. But it's I'll let you know when it's out.
Yeah, please do. And I know it will do very well. I think
uh,
it's a
Thank you.
very nice kind of type of story that we need now, that kind
Yeah,
of
very positive.
reconciliation between the small self and the big
Yeah,
self or something like that.
exactly,
It's part of the
exactly.
process we're going through.
Yeah,
It's good.
yeah. I understand you've been working on some interesting things too.
Ah,
You've been
yeah. I,
you've been going into the past, I understand.
yes. And also, you know what? I told you before I was going to tell you something before we
Yeah,
started recording, and I had
yeah.
forgotten, but now I'm going to tell you. So, one interesting thing that I started doing is I started martial arts training.
Oh, really?
Yes, I started training this kind of kung fu that is called Wing Chun. It's
Uh-huh.
the kind of kung fu that Bruce Lee used to do in his
Uh-huh.
movies, etc.
Yeah.
And it also comes from another guy called Ip Man.
Uh-huh.
That's my line.
Hmm.
And it's been such an interesting experience to. First of all, have you ever tried any martial arts in your life?
Taekwondo, yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so when I was smaller, I did taekwondo.
Uh-huh.
And I remember like, ha, the punches, and it was like a very nice experience for me. So
Yeah.
now I thought that I needed something very different, and I was led to join this school, you know,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, and I'm having such a blast learning the moves and
Oh, great.
learning routines that I can practice,
Uh-huh.
and shaping the body in new ways, you know, that I had never
Yes.
tried,
Yes.
doing moving my energy in certain ways,
Uh-huh.
and the teacher, they call them the shifu. So
Uh-huh.
this shifu is very knowledgeable in all the energetic parts of all of this. So he's always talking about the meridians and the the different parts that was here in the chest, the pericardium, and the importance
Mhm.
of this, and the importance of our pelvis, and all of that area.
Yes.
And at the same
Mhm.
time, I'm learning this. I'm reading this Mantak Chia book called Tao Yin,
Uh-huh.
in which he learns a kind of Qigong, I think
Hmm.
is the word, right? It
Yes.
is
Yes.
an energy movement, and
Yes.
it's kind of a yoga, but it's very interesting too. So I'm
Mhm.
like exploring all of that and looking at the past in that way, perhaps.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Uh,
That's
and
when you learn how much your body is capable of and how
yeah,
little of your energies you've really used, it's an eye opener, isn't it?
yeah, definitely. And learning, for example, an interesting thing was on the first day, he told us that what we needed to learn the most is to create a root. So
Hmm.
first, the root chakra would be what
Hmm.
you and I might say, right? So we need to create root. So he said, okay, he opened his arms like this, and
Hmm.
there's two new guys, which is myself and another guy. He's very tall and very big, like a
Yeah.
mountain. Yeah. And he told us, okay, try to move me. He opened his arms like this, and each of us in one of his arms started pushing and pushing, and we couldn't move him, not an inch. And then he
Yes.
said,
Yes.
okay, come on, really, this time do it for real. He went like this again and lifted one of his feet, you know, and did like the tree pose,
Yeah.
standing on one foot. And he said, okay, try to move me. And we couldn't move him again.
Yes.
No, no, on one foot. And so that's
Yes.
the type of route he's teaching us to develop, right? And for me, it's
Yes.
been so great. I've always had trouble. I do yoga for a long time. I've been doing, and it's always been kind of hard for me, the balance postures. Generally, I'm like kind of wobbly, and
Yes.
this I've been learning a lot, and now getting this extra boost on that for me is
Yes.
so nice and so important, because when we talk about chakras and healing and all of that,
Mhm.
one thing that I've recently learned and understood is how important it is to have a balanced root
Mhm.
chakra and an open and clean root chakra, because it is one of the entering points of the energy. And so
Yes.
if that is relatively blocked, it's going to limit the amount of energy that can flow
Yeah.
upwards,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
This is I was about to say it's a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence, but it's
Neither do I.
it is a synchronicity that
I
you and I
mean,
that you talk
coincidences.
about this today, because I have in the past few weeks become aware of the fact that I need to do a lot of chakra work,
Mm,
and so I find myself unable to do it because I get so tied up in worldly
mm,
things. And the only thing that'll keep me from being tied up in worldly things is to do more chakra work. And so
mm,
it goes around and around in a vicious circle. It's just like in meditation. When you're really upset and stressed and anxious, you need to meditate,
yeah.
but it makes it harder to meditate. So you don't meditate, but
Mm,
that's the only thing that's going to help you get out of it. So
mm,
it's I'm glad to hear you mention this, because it
mm,
gives me an extra impetus to get back and do the chakra work that I know I have to
mm.
do. That's
Something
great.
that can help you be more like prone to do all of that could be
Hmm.
like having mantras sounding in the background,
Yeah. Yeah.
just playing on the background, or certain tones,
Yep.
or relaxing music, and that kind of keeps you in a certain vibe,
Yep.
and then you're like more prone to say, oh, okay, I feel so good, I'm gonna do some chakra work.
Yeah.
I feel so relaxed. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had I've been bottling up a lot of things in the last couple of years, I've
Mm.
discovered, and now they're starting to come out in my dreams, for instance.
Right.
These terror filled dreams and stuff. and you realize it's inside, it's trying to get out. And so I've been doing a lot of dream work as well, and trying to
Mm,
understand that when I wake up in the middle of the night and the body has been in this fight or flight response, and my body is now full of adrenaline because of all these thoughts and anxiousness and all this rest. And so one of the things you have to do, I have to do anyway, I have to get out of bed no matter what time it is, in the middle of the night, and just go and meditate. I find that extremely important, but it's very difficult to do when you're full of adrenaline like that. So it's a never ending circle, a vicious circle, some people might say, but I think it's the answer. Oop, I can't hear you now.
yeah, sorry.
Okay, okay,
I
there
was
you are.
muted. A
Oh,
very
there you go.
liberating thing is when you remember the breath and you remember like, okay, whatever this storm that is going through, okay, I need to just take a few deep
Yes,
breaths, and
yes,
it's going to be really hard, but taking the main focus to the breath and like
yes.
looking at the waves pass,
Um,
it's whew, it's the work,
yeah,
but
yeah,
also not like running away from a situation, also like,
yes,
okay, being in the city if there's something that's going on, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But then when you have time, or if you're safe, and you can like take a few moments to breathe, if you can like go somewhere else for a moment and take a few breaths, and oh, that
yeah,
really
yeah,
helps.
yeah.
It's been a lifesaver for me, that kind of
It's
things.
oh yeah, it's so important. It is contrary to everything that I've done in my whole life. I've always been an action oriented person. The
Mm,
idea when I'm facing something, a problem or a difficulty, my problem is I've always wanted to do something about it.
mm,
I have a hard time just taking it
mm,
in and just letting the universe help. I always want to be
mm,
out there to help. I always used to say, well, a rolling stone gathers no moss, but sometimes if the stone can slow down a little bit,
mm.
gather a little moss might be a good thing. And
Mm,
it's I find it very difficult. Especially in my older age now, I find myself going back to uh, well, dealing with things now that in the past I would have felt that I had to do something about it. When somebody told me they were having troubles, or they would try to lay their burdens upon me, and as a counselor and let me help them, I always wanted to help them. I just didn't want to be there for them and let them help themselves, through that. I find it a very difficult thing to do. And it's been a great loss in my life that I haven't learned this earlier. So it is tough. It is tough. When I just sit down to meditate, there's a part of me that just says, "Oh, don't waste time. Do something."
mm.
And it's difficult. That's why one of the things in writing uh, this new work of fiction is so much fun, because I can put myself in the place of this young boy, and I can understand his reactions because he was the young boy that I was. And I can at the same time look back and say, oh, I wish I had had a teacher like that when I was a kid, when I was younger. If I had had a mentor like that, it would have been a totally different thing. But when I was growing up in the society and the culture in which I lived, mentors like that were few and far between. We were an action oriented uh, society growing up. The men had just come back from fighting World War II, and they were busy inventing suburbia and uh, putting a chicken in every pot and two cars in every garage, and everybody was succeed and get ahead and grow and grow and grow all the time. We never learned the wisdom of that little word, enough. And I find now at this stage of life, I have to learn that. And it's difficult. It's difficult to overcome all those tendencies. Your mind sees the problem, and your mind sees that it was a mistake, but the mind has such habits by my time of life that it's very difficult to break those habits and say, no, it's time for something different. It's time to slow down. It's time to just be. Um, and it is it's a constant challenge, a constant challenge.
I think it's connected to the rebalancing of the masculine and the feminine energies in
Yes,
ourselves.
yes,
Um, that is very much going on right now in, I mean, it's probably constantly going on from one side of the pendulum to the other, and so
Mhm.
forth.
Yeah,
And we are working towards a middle point, I think, now. Mm.
yeah.
And
I I have friends in Cornwall in the United Kingdom, and I have
mhm,
friends in Portugal. I have friends in Europe who I'm in contact with, and I'm sensing that what I'm facing here in my own country and in my own culture is really a worldwide phenomenon in many ways. And I'm amazed when Jan looks at um, the graphics, all the stuff that comes in from the website. For instance, it tells not only who is
mhm,
responding to my web page, but where they are from. And I'm amazed that uh, people in Siberia, in China, in India, in different places around the country, many in South America, how they're finding my website, finding my books, getting in touch with me. It's just a worldwide phenomenon, and I'm I find it very encouraging that we can develop these kinds of communities because it makes me feel that I'm not alone. None of us are alone. There is a community, a lot of it based through podcasts such as yours that reach people in so many different areas. Um, it gives me hope that perhaps what we're experiencing is not just an historical thing that's unique to my place and my time, but is found all over the world. Uh, because that means the whole human race is involved. And I find it very encouraging. I was talking to uh, on a podcast last week that was designed. The podcast itself was designed for people who are interested in the possibilities of
mhm,
intelligent alien life in the universe, and have they contacted our planet in the past. And we had a call in. A person called in and wanted to know what I thought about these recent sightings that have made the news all over the place about the military cameras that picked up these objects, and the military finally saying, "We just don't know what they are." And he said, "Do you feel threatened by that?" And I said, "Well, it's hard for me to feel threatened by something that's not threatening us. Seems to be running away from us." And we got into this big long conversation about it. Is it possible that civilizations or human races or intelligent races, intelligent beings, have to come to a certain place in history and make the decision either to go ahead in a positive way or to destroy themselves? As we were talking earlier, do we stand at such a time in history? And I just can't help but wonder if there are entities from uh, perhaps other places in the solar system, perhaps other dimensions that are watching us and staying out of our way and until we make the decisions that we have to make. And if we make a positive decision, then we'll be ready to enter into a much wider family of entities, of intelligent beings. And if we don't make that decision, then we have proved ourselves not worthy to do so. It makes me wonder. It really does. Uh, People say, if life is discovered out there, what's that going to do to your religion? And I'm going to say it just expands it, because if you believe in source or Manitou or Brahman or God or whatever you want to call it, if that entity that source, as I the word I'm currently using more than anything else, if that's just big enough to cover life on one small planet in the universe, it isn't big enough. If God is going to be God, God has to be God of the whole multiverse, not just one little planet in one little universe in one little place. And so I find it very uh, liberating to think in these terms, and it makes me it gives me encouragement to know that there are people around the world who are thinking along these lines in places where you wouldn't expect it at all.
mhm. Yeah, so much being being part of a community, or knowing that there
Yes.
is a group of people following similar things. Because in
Yeah.
this thing that I was talking of, balancing the male and feminine aspects
Hmm.
of our inner nature,
Yes. Yes.
it's a balancing of something you mentioned, doing and receiving or accepting, and then through that process learning that behind all of that there is only one consciousness. So
Hmm.
like the image that was coming before was when you were speaking of the stone
Yeah.
rolling down the hill,
Yes. Yes.
uh, the, being in action there. And so
Yeah.
like switching to a mode of receiving would be like the rock letting the mountain roll it down, right?
Ah.
And being
Yes.
still within itself, but yet at the same time rolling down the hill,
Yes.
that
Yes.
accepting and letting the universe push you, but
Yes.
it's a very gentle push because it's a like a gravity, it's a natural pull or push, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Ah, that's good. I like that.
Mm.
I
and, and
like that.
and through that going, these are some notes I took while you were speaking. This stuff came, uh, and learning to expand our identity, going to a larger
Hmm.
identity, a bigger identity that can hold the individual identity of Rafa, of Jim, etc., and at the same time be more and more able to be aware of the bigger picture, holding
Yeah.
both things at the same time. And of course, it's a cultivation, it's a practice that one develops throughout lifetime and lifetime after lifetime. And we are all in a kind of a peak moment of that process, I think, or of
Hmm.
one of the peaks that
Hmm.
there's probably many throughout history.
Yes. Yes. Those, as you were talking, I was thinking of those Russian dolls. You know, you open up one and there's another one inside and inside and inside, and they just keep going. And I'm wondering, people say, "I'm trying to know myself. Who am I?" Well, you are a community yourself. Different people, as you peel away the layers of the onions within yourself, and then put that together with all the different. Oh, what a wonderful get together it's going to be. I like to picture it at the end of life. I have this picture in my mind of being in this school down here called life, and someday when it comes time for me to pass out of this body, and I'll return to that community that has been watching over me that I didn't know, and to share all the experiences, not only that have I had, but that we've all had. Uh, I just find it extremely important. I wrote a book that never got published called Sabuko and Me. Uh, Someday I hope it gets published, but it's a story of my own um, discovery of myself on the other side, a spiritual guardian angel or spirit helper that I call Sabuko, who uh, I actually discovered through dowsing, and that Sabuko is really me on the other side. That I am being watched and I am being cared for, and I am here for a purpose. So even though I began this podcast on a negative note, it's teaching me, at least in my mind, to say, wait a minute, whatever happens, there's a reason for it. And you have to continue to understand that that's one of the reasons, even if it's a bad thing happening to you or it feels bad, that's one of the reasons you came here in the first place. So I,
Yeah, that's a real
it
paradox,
helps.
right? That we came here to feel emotions that
Yeah,
are
not just the good stuff. Yeah,
so
yeah,
intense. Yeah,
not just the good stuff and the bad stuff. That's what we came here to do.
yeah.
To identify with just the good. I had a big problem with Christianity all for all of my life. You know, Christianity has the idea of the devil and the Christ. You know, the good angel and the bad angel, and we're always taught in Christianity to reject the bad and identify with the good, and that's how to get through it. And I never found that nearly as profound as Buddhism, for instance, which accepts both, as the Buddha found the middle way that passes between the two pairs of opposites to that place beyond both, which embraces them both. I find that a much healthier way to live, to uh, embrace the duality of this life and go beyond it to that place that looks at both of them. I find that a very important, a very important thing to teach. I wish I had learned that earlier in life, but
Mm.
well, what can you do? You can't go back and repeat it. So,
I mean, you've had a pretty interesting life, you know. You've learned so many things that you're now sharing, you know. Uh, it's
well,
okay if you missed a few others along the way. We all do.
well,
The good
thank
thing
you.
is that eventually you reached this point of having this understanding that I assume you feel is something that's empowering for your life, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is, and acting on it, of course, is always the difficult part. Um, any kind of new knowledge, you take it in, and we go, aha, oh, that's great, now I get it. But then you have to act on it. There's a there's a wonderful story in the Gospel of Mark, uh, chapter 2, in the New Testament. Jesus was teaching his disciples about faith, and he has been giving them all these lessons, and I just had this picture in my mind about Jesus lecturing about faith and the disciples sitting down taking out their little notepads and writing down point one, point two, point three. Okay, faith, got it, right here in my book, so I know I understand it. And after the lecture was over, he gets into the boat and tells these people, okay, guys, we're going to the other side of the lake. And Jesus then goes up, gets in the front of the boat, and promptly falls asleep, leaves the disciples on their own. So they're these Galilean fishermen. They're out there. They should be used to all this weather, but a big storm comes up, a huge storm comes up, and they're panicked. And they run to the front of the boat and they shake Jesus. And their first Master, don't you care that we are about to perish? And Jesus looks at them and says, "Oh, ye of little faith." They hadn't learned their lessons at all. They had to first learn it, and that's good. But then when it came time to put it into practice, they failed. They all got an F on the exam that day, and the F wasn't for faith. And I know I find it the same thing with myself. I learn all these great spiritual insights and say, "There, I've got it." And then I enter a rocky point where the test comes. Are you going to apply it
Mm,
or not? And so many
mm,
times I have just failed,
mm,
failed
mm,
completely. I love it the way the Buddha says, if you cannot find enlightenment where you are, you cannot find enlightenment. Uh, and I,
Sometimes also we push ourselves too hard, you know,
yeah,
and I think
yeah,
that might be something that reflects on you, right? That
yes,
you learn this lesson and now you're okay, so now I gotta be a good boy
yeah,
and I gotta learn it and put it into
yeah,
practice.
yeah.
But
Now,
many
now,
times it takes time, you know,
sure,
incorporating new habits. It's kind of a trickling of drops, you know, that eventually form a pool or something.
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
the important thing is
I
that
as a
keeping it present, you know.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly. As a
Returning. Mm.
as a former professor and school teacher, I know that you can stand up and tell your students something, but you don't know whether they have it until the test comes.
Mm.
And so and then you find out whether they really know it. Well, sometimes in life, when we find a difficult time, that's the test. That's when we
Mm.
find out when we're being graded on how well we know it.
Mm.
So it helps.
Hey,
It
you
helps
know,
to go through those.
your friend Sebuco that you mentioned, that
Yes.
seemed like such an interesting subplot, you know, that we could
Oh,
explore maybe one day. But
oh yeah.
um, uh,
Well,
the,
I first introduced him. I did introduce him
uh-huh.
in the book Quantum Akashic Field. That's right.
Mm,
But I wrote a whole book called Sabuko and Me, and I have not been able to get it published.
mm,
No one wanted to do it. They didn't know quite where to put it on the shelf. They
mm,
said,
mhm,
"Is it fiction? Is it true?" And I said, "No, it's true." But oh, you mean I'm supposed to put a book on the shelf that says there are
mhm,
these uh, spirit guides off? And that's right.
mhm,
Well, that sounds like fiction to me. No, it's not
mhm.
fiction. So we may find ourselves making that into an audiobook and publishing
Yeah,
that ourselves too. I
yeah.
don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
You know what? So it made me think of one of the guests that was here last year. He's from Denmark, and his name is Soren Hauge. and he was on the
Mm.
show. I think you would find interesting the episode I did with him, where he talks about, he called it, um, or I titled the episode "Contacting Elves and Finding
Uh-huh.
Your Elven Heart." He wrote a book
Oh,
called The Elven Heart, and your
I
Sebukov
love it.
sounds very much like how he describes these elves.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to look that one up. I
yeah,
really
yeah,
am.
yeah,
I
yeah.
will. I
I
will
think
do
you're
that
really
for
gonna
sure.
enjoy it,
Oh,
and
thank you.
I will link it here in
Well,
YouTube
I was going
for
to say,
whoever's watching.
could you send me the link to the podcast he did with you, the show he did with you?
Yeah,
I'd love to
I
find
will.
that. Yeah.
I'll email it to you.
Great, great.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
All right. So Jim,
Wonderful.
yeah, I know you're kind of pressed on time. So if it's okay
Ah,
with you, we can kind of wrap up right here. Yeah.
okay.
Is there any last thoughts you wanted to leave us with? And also, please, at the end, you can also share your socials and all of that stuff.
Well, yeah, probably if anybody's interested in finding out more about the kinds of things I'm doing, my website is www.jimwillis.net.
Mm,
And on that website, you also can find links to my Facebook page and my YouTube page. I'm really excited about the YouTube page because we're putting up segments. The latest episode series we're working on is a series on dowsing.
mhm,
We have three dowsing videos on the YouTube channel, and there's also some other things I do. One that I'm especially interested in is called One Ring to Rule Them All, and it's about the shamanic component that I believe is at the basis of every world religion at the very beginning. So jimwillis.net, and there's also a contact page. If anybody wants to contact me, they can just send me an email through that contact page, and I love to hear from people. You and I can talk to each other on the screen, but it's nice to know that other people are listening in too. So anytime, love to hear from you.
mm. Yeah, Jim, man. I want to ask you one last question. This is a question I wanna start asking in every episode at the end.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of a segment thing that I'm starting to learn
Sure.
how to put into play. So
Yeah.
will you share with us one technique that has helped you along your journey in your mystic journey?
Uh, dowsing.
Mm,
Uh, Dowsing for earth energy led me to uh, a I have to say it's the only connection between myself and the other side that has never ever let me down. Just about every single day of my life, I pick up my dowsing rods and I can ask questions of any nature. Um, and the rods never fail. It's frustrating sometimes because with dowsing rods, you can only get a yes or a no answer, but they've never failed me. There have been times when my prayer life has fallen apart. There's been times
mm,
when my meditation life has fallen apart. But dowsing always, always there. And I've learned through dowsing to contact Sabuko, to learn how to contact Gaia, the earth itself on the other side. And the experiences I've had, they just never failed me ever.
that's so nice. It's incredible to see how that tool can have such an important spiritual
Yeah,
significance in
yeah,
your life.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Mm.
very much.
Well, we will then ask people to go check out Jim's tutorials on dowsing because they're really cool. I watch them and they're very good. So yeah, jimwillis.net. And I don't know, Jim, this is always a real pleasure for me to
Oh,
talk
thank you,
with you.
Rafa.
Hmm.
It's always great to talk with you, and thank you for cheering me up today too. That was
Yeah,
wonderful.
I love doing that.
I needed to talk to you.
But for me, it's also important to keep in contact with perspectives, from what I call our elders, with absolute
Mhm.
respect.
Oh,
I see you guys from a different generation, that you're here and you've lived through so much change, just like perhaps my generation did, without the development of technology. But you've been here for that, and
yep.
for a big portion of your lives before that.
Yeah,
So
yes, that's right.
you've seen so much change, and you guys have this very unique perspective that I like very much, and I love having elders on the show
Oh,
uh,
thank
to
you,
to help
thank you,
continue spreading that information and to cultivate my own worldviews.
Thank you. You're doing important work, Rafa. Keep it up. Thank you so much. I appreciate being part of it.
Thank you, Jim. Have a nice day.